Hi, and welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, thanks for watching. Well, the state legislature is putting the final wraps on the new state budget. We'll hear from our all-star business panel on that. And then, will they ever do transportation funding? Will they get the roads and bridges fixed? Bob Latham is here. He's going to help us out with that. All of that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, as this show airs throughout the state, the final budget should be adopted by the legislature, meeting the June 30 deadline for the second time after 8 years of not what? Yeah, that's right, not getting a state budget done on time. Joining me, as often is the case, is our all-star panel. We've got Gene Barr. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. And Fred Anton is the CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, frequent guest on the program. All right, I want to ask both of you just very quickly. Gene Barr, is there anything in that budget that strikes you as something that you think is unusual or different? It looks like it's, pretty much what we expected. Anything in there?
It's nothing unusual. I mean, every year there's always something a little bit different. Yeah. I mean, you've got the ethane tax credit, this manufacturing credit.
We'll talk about that.
You've got some attempts to change the way that we provide social services through the counties by trying to move that to a block grant program, let the counties decide. But every year you have something that's a little bit of a different wrinkle. You've got a lower spend number. It's about a 1.7% increase. So nothing extraordinary, but every year there's always something that's a little different.
Yeah. Fred, no sales tax, no income tax hike. Go ahead.
I'm disappointed, really, at the way this is played out in the press. And it's made Corbett look like the person who wants to cut spending for a lot of things that we all want. And it makes it look like the legislature is the one
restored to $500 million.
Yes, and fought for spending for essential services and so forth. And I think that's unfortunate because we all know that the real reason those dollars were put back in is because there have been higher tax receipts collected over the last 4 months, and it's anticipated that we have a higher spend number. So I think Corbett has gotten
bad rap
and bad press.
Well, maybe we'll have you guys back and we can talk a little bit about that. His job performance is not where it should be, but it's not unlike some other governors.
It's pretty comparable to what
I was going to say. That's right. With Rendell's dropped after he proposed the 10% income tax hike, as you both know.
On that issue, I think Governor Corbett's performance has been outstanding for this reason. The best opportunity for gain in Pennsylvania has been Marcellus Shale development.
Right.
In other words, I give that issue 100% weight and give many of these other issues 10% weight. He got that issue right. We could have gone a lot of different directions on that.
I want to stay on energy for a minute, Gene Barr, and ask you about the Shell Petrochemical Company. They want to put this plant out in western PA, actually in Beaver County. Won't get into the organic chemistry of it, but essentially gas to ethene to ethylene to plastics creates a lot of jobs. There, this week, is Gene Barr, union leaders, and Democrats on the same platform.
Amazing, isn't it?
Go ahead.
Amazing, isn't it? Well, look, this is Pennsylvania's best opportunity to take full advantage of this great resource we have in Marcellus that Fred had talked about. It's the difference between what's called dry gas and wet gas. Let's not get into that. But the western part of the state has a lot of gas that has liquids in it. It's a very valuable liquid. And Pennsylvania has a tremendous opportunity based on the preliminary statement by Shell that they're going to invest $3 to $4 billion. They're assessing it now. They're going to make that determination. Pennsylvania's problem is we have certain hurdles. We've got a very high corporate net income tax rate. The industry has a structure along the Gulf where they could refine this and produce these products down there. So we've got to take
West Virginia or Ohio, right?
Well, they desperately want this new plant sited there, and I think the governor, to his great credit, has worked this tremendously, working with Shell to get this thing headed to where we're going to create thousands and thousands of jobs.
The one criticism, either one of you can answer this, Fred, I'll start with you. The one criticism I hear is not aiding the company, it's the amount, the $1.7 billion, that arguably the largest tax break for any company, and whether just picking out one company, give them a tax break, not, you know, how that argument goes.
Well,
is that too much, Fred?
No, it is
okay.
not too much. And the reason why, first of all, the real tax break that Shell's getting is not that, but they're getting the tax break from the Keystone Opportunity Zone for 14 or 15 years. They won't have to pay any taxes. Now, they'll get a big tax break out of that. This other break is based on the development of other manufacturers in Pennsylvania. It's limited to activities which occur in Pennsylvania. So really, none of that break occurs. Now, the argument made, would it be better to spread this out over
25 years, which is what...
but would it be better to reduce corporate taxes, like reduce the CNI? That's the argument. Some professors say it would be better to spread the tax break. That won't happen. That's not going to happen.
So your point is that this is the best deal you can get to create the jobs. Is that your point? Go ahead.
My point.
I would love to drop the rate. The reality is we're not going to be able to drop the rate quick enough in the next 18 to 24 months to make this a viable option for Shell. It's not going to happen. This is not, if you have another company come in and put another cracker in, they take full advantage of that as well. So this is not only Shell's the only one that can get it. If someone else comes in, they're eligible for it.
We're going to break.
They can do that.
I want to point out that $1 billion given out during the Rendell years for all sorts of community and economic development projects, that's direct money. That's direct money.
That's
Film industry,
correct.
$75 million.
Well, that's a tax credit as well.
I understand. That's different. But
there's a difference between money up front and money if you put the economic development in.
Pennsylvania has this long history of giving both economic and community development grants and tax credits. Is that right? Am I right or wrong?
There's various programs that have been around, and they've kind of mixed and matched different projects.
But we do it.
Correct. This is one where there's no upfront money.
All right, we're running to a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussions about the Pennsylvania budget. We'll see where it all goes.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We got two of the state's leading representatives of top business organizations in the state, Fred Anton and Gene Barr, and we're chatting about the business implications in the budget. Look, both of you have made the point that upfront money, community and economic development money, it goes here, it goes there, stadiums, convention centers, some good, some maybe not so good. But your argument would be that this actually forces them to create the jobs. Go ahead.
Manufacturing jobs.
Right.
Where the hope here is that there will be spin-off of manufacturing jobs. There's a hope here that from a gas as used as to fabricate plastics, there will be new manufacturers to come here. What are we lacking? What has a big payoff? Manufacturing jobs, not stadiums, not soft jobs, but manufacturing jobs.
So you're talking about high paid jobs that will stay indefinitely, or you know what I mean by that. Maybe not indefinitely,
as
but
permanent as you can get a job. Yeah, I mean, it's $70,000 to $80,000 a year.
What's a much greater economic gain is when you make products and you sell them outside the state rather than you sell them within the state. You get a much better bang for the buck by selling the products outside the state and bringing money.
When the governor was on the program a couple of weeks ago, he said that he would insist that they get upfront commitments about things that Shell would do.
Yes.
In other words, products here, stay here,
correct.
Create. Go ahead. You can almost finish my thought.
This entire program is designed to have Pennsylvania economic activity. You get the credit when you produce it and utilize it in Pennsylvania. It's designed, as I said earlier, to make the full and best use of this asset that we have. And again, yeah, I understand in certain cases you're going to want to give some upfront money to a company to get them here to build infrastructure. Yeah. There's no upfront money. There's no indebtedness. Yeah. There's no borrowing. There's no money from the Treasury to any company out there in order to put this plan.
Rendell Governor Rendell helped Harley Davidson over in York with, I think that was upfront money. You
I'm
might
not
recall.
Sure. Could have been.
I thought it was upfront money, not a tax credit. But so again, Fred, I'll let you finish on this. I want to move to something else. But we have a long tradition in this state of doing this. I mean, maybe as much as $3 billion over the last 15 years put into economic and community development money. Some produced jobs, some were good, and some, quite frankly, as the Auditor General Jack Wagner points out in a recent audit, we don't know how many jobs they were created.
As we said, I'd rather not have to do all this and just kind of compete on the rate. Trouble is, you can't unilaterally disarm the Rendell administration.
Let's not forget what's made all this possible is the attitude taken by Governor Corbett to get these drillers in here in a very narrow window. The price of natural gas has dropped. If they didn't come in here with basically low regulation and no taxes, we wouldn't have had the infrastructure developed to go ahead. We're the center. We are the center of Marcellus Shale development in this entire area.
Yep. All right, Gene, let's talk to another. Let's finish our discussion with these business taxes and what you think needs to be done. As you point out, your businesses pay property sales and payroll taxes. And if we're going to create jobs, and let's face it, that's really what this state needs. If you go back and you say, what is the biggest problem Pennsylvania faces? It's that we need to start creating jobs. Too much out-migration.
Right.
We still have it with young kids graduated from college, no jobs in the state, and parts of the state in particular, not so much down in the southeast where Fred lives, but up in northeast, southwest. So what's the solution here? Well,
the solution is to do much of the things that we're doing now that this administration, working hand in hand with the legislature, has done. Passing a budget with no tax increases, continuing to allow the capital stock and franchise tax to go out, solving the unemployment compensation problem that we did a couple weeks ago. That was huge, and it was done in a bipartisan manner. Looking, as we've talked earlier, about looking at the corporate net income tax rate that's currently the highest effective rate in the United States and looking to try and address that in the next year. And as we're doing a little more, moving incrementally, trying to end the penalty that we currently have in the state taxation code for companies that hire our citizens and put buildings here.
All right, we have about 40 seconds left. You get the final word, Fred. What would you do? You agree with?
I agree with Gene. I think that it's meat and potatoes. There's nothing mysterious about it. We've been urging these actions, and we frankly, during the period of the Rendell administration, didn't get much cooperation, even tort reform, which Rendell frustrated, which we now have gotten through. That's a big help.
He's too busy running around testifying in trials as selling books as a character witness. All right, we'll have you guys back in a couple of weeks when we start this fall session. Not a lot of days left. Some big items on the agenda to talk about. All right, transportation funding. It's been elusive. How elusive will it be? Bob Latham will help us understand all of that and more after talking about this. We pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to The Problem Over. This is sort of a show in which we're looking at some of the needs and the ways to improve the Commonwealth. And Bob Latham's here. He's the Executive VP, the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, a frequent guest. He's our transportation expert. And one of the Bob, one of the problems that keeps bedeviling us, and we can't seem to get it resolved despite the fact that these need to be fixed, is the $3.5 billion annual need to rebuild roads and bridges, and somehow, some way, we just can't get people on board. Yet the voters want it. We know that. Gene Barr, the chamber, they say, let's get these roads and bridges. First of all, where does it stand now? Where does it stand?
Where it stands is we think that the Congress has passed a federal transportation bill which cuts back the money to the states, which is kind of interesting. They say we're going to give you more flexibility and more streamlining of projects, but if you don't have the money to do them, that's going to be a difficult task. At the state level, we're basically dead in the water. The legislative leadership says they're on board doing a comprehensive transportation funding plan, and the governor is basically silent. You mentioned a $3.5 billion needs gap. They projected that over 20 years, or over 10 years, if it were not to be addressed, it's going to be 7.4. And you can quickly do the math. That's $1 million a day increase in the cost of fixing the problem. So basically, since August 1st last year, when the commission presented the governor the funding commission for transportation presented the governor's plan, we have increase the cost of addressing this problem by another $330 million. And the clock ticks every day that we don't do anything about it.
I'll tell you, riding on these roads, I get around the state a good bit. This is going to sound maybe a little mean, but they're dreadful.
They are dreadful.
They're dreadful.
The interesting thing is we're not doing this bill. We're debating whether or not to privatize the liquor stores. The big issue that you talked in the first segment about was the ethylene plant. We certainly support that. Yeah. That's a good move for the Commonwealth. But the sad part of it is that those jobs that will be available from that facility will be there due to unemployment in the construction industry and other industries that we would finance. Now, let me make one comment about the condition of the roads in Pennsylvania. None other than presidential candidate Mitt Romney commented on it when he came to Lebanon last week or the week before. So here we are apparently not dealing with transportation because of election year politics, but the candidate comes and says we got to do something about the roads in this state.
Well, I mean, in our state, where the legislature is concerned, where the voters aren't going to throw out any lawmaker that makes some of the suggestions that have been made about ways to fund it. But here's the deal as far as, tell me if I'm wrong about this. We know we need this, so it's necessary for business, and as I think you've estimated, for every $1 billion, you're going to create, 30,000 jobs?
Yes, exactly.
But here's the point. Not only does it create jobs, people saying, well, you're just taking public money and creating jobs, but in this case, you're fixing the roads and bridges.
Well, exactly. And the other point is, this is not money that's going to the government. This is money that's going to the private sector. 75% of every dollar spent by PennDOT goes to private sector firms. So those are private sector jobs. You have the efficiencies of the private sector that are building and maintaining and engineering these projects. And you talked earlier about, what are we going to do with students coming out of college and where are the jobs for them? We have tremendous engineering colleges all over the Commonwealth. And what do? We export them to other states because there are no engineering jobs in the Commonwealth.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, the problems that traffic congestion creates. How much fuel do we burn up because of that, because we can't get around, or what it means with bad roads and congestion, what price we pay for it now as opposed to fixing it. We'll take care of it. We're going to solve that problem after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Bob Latham from the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. He's been lead man on trying to get the transportation funding. Look, Bob, you've been on this program a lot. You're our expert on this stuff. We don't often talk about relating this to real people and real people's concerns, right? Let's get personal now. Let's get personal. You're in a traffic jam. Go ahead. What's going on?
Well, I mean, there are several aspects of that, Terry. And you have your personal vehicles. You're trying to get to an appointment. You're trying to get home to see your children's soccer game. It's a quality of life issue. It's a disruption issue, but also on the economic side, just-in-time delivery is very crucial now in movement of goods. So it's a system that we're dealing with here. In other words, that costs business money, which ends up in higher prices.
And also, how about personally, if you're sitting in a traffic jam or in some congestion, you end up paying more for gasoline, so it's just driving everybody. It's personal cost too, no?
Absolutely, yeah. The cost of wasted fuel would be higher than the additional fees that would be suggested by the Commission's report. The other thing I think we're going to have to start looking at here is, in addition to the condition of the roads, we're looking at our condition of our bridges, and we're seeing. Throughout the Commonwealth, we're starting to see bridges that are going to be closed and posted and weight restricted. That has an impact on emergency vehicles. That has an impact on the agricultural industry, particularly in the rural areas. Those trucks delivering things, say, like milk, that have to be diverted by 10 miles. Think of the cost of diesel fuel to do that. That impacts our agricultural situation.
Now, let's just go through, before I let you go, a couple of things we could do. Maybe the voter isn't overwhelmingly saying let's do this, but I think when faced with the roads, that situation would change. Get better roads. They can see it dedicated to that. That would be very different. But so, what are 2 or 3 things we could do to pay for this?
Well, let me make one point, and that is, when the cost of an item that you buy at the store has the sales tax applied to it, if that item goes from $1 to $2. The sales tax goes from 6 cents to 12 cents.
Right.
If the cost of gasoline goes from $3 to $4, the tax is the exact same amount at $4 as it is at $3.
That's right now.
That is right now. There is no inflation adjustment whatsoever. In fact, we have capped what we call the oil company franchise tax, or the fuel tax that's applied at the distributor level, so that we can't take advantage of those fluctuations that are dictated by the global global markets. So we could increase that cap on the oil company franchise tax and generate considerable amounts of money that way. Another thing, this is not really another thing that's not really part of the Commission's recommendations, but we're starting to look at is the proliferation of the use of natural gas-powered vehicles. In '97, the law says they have to collect tax on that. It's not being done now. That's something.
But whatever happens, it needs to be done and be done soon. You would agree?
Yes.
All right. Thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.